being able to climb on safe bolts affects every climber out there. Now, I think it's pretty funny how fat this chain is for how tiny that bolt is. But there is a tool that will make this easier. And if I say core drilling, this is probably what most men are thinking of. But the core drilling tools I'm talking about is this one. In the past, you would have to figure out how to attach an adapter to those threads, which sometimes are not sticking out very far, or sometimes they're rusty or bashed in, or a whole host of other reasons you can't get something to grab the bolt itself. And then you have to attach that to an extractor. And there are more extractor options these days, but even if you can get that out, sometimes there are sleeves inside of the hole that you have to be able to also grab and extract. And it's not that you can't tap them and extract them, it's the fact that sometimes they're rusty, falling apart, but still good enough to where you can't just grind it up and pull it out. Now, a little guy like this, you could technically pry out of the rock, but sometimes that will snap them off. The whole point of what we're trying to solve here is using existing holes. Now, for some bolts, once you get the adapter on, you need to spin the bolt so it disengages it from the rock, and then you can extract it, which we tried to do. Some bolts would come out and some would not.
It broke here, so the wedge is still down there.
And if you snap the bolt in the hole, there is nothing you can do about it. Until now, that you can core drill out the bolt. Now, Greg German is the Q of bolt removal, and he pioneered a hack from other tools to solve the current problem bolt developers have. Now, the problem with core drilling is that the drill bits are the diameter of the outside of the hole. And so this is a 14 millimeter bit, and it is 14 millimeters. Now, the hack that Greg German discovered was glass core drill bits have a much thinner wall. This is only 1.4 millimeters thick, whereas other core drill bits look to be 3 or 4 millimeters thick. And the last thing we want is a 20 millimeter hole in order to replace a 3/8 bolt. Now, one of the big concerns with installing glue-ins, and I've been told this after installing glue-ins, is there's no way to remove them. And they were right. You can't grab onto it, spin it, and extract it. And so we explored drilling a hole next to it in order to bury it under the P of the next bolt. And that sort of works. But if you can just reuse the exact same hole, that would be ideal. Now, Bobby went to go replace a fixed Healy bolt that had a sharp edge behind the head because it wasn't installed deep enough. And if a rope got caught behind it, it would maybe cut it. So you got to cut the head off or bash it off. And in this case, he angle grinded it a little bit and then smashed it over with the hammer in order to just have the studs left over in the rock.
I don't think any of this audio is going to be usable at all.
Now, please be careful when you're angle grinding on a rock that you're not leaving half circle cuts on the rock itself. And then Bobby used the core drill bit for a few minutes and was able to extract the bolt out of the hole and then have the hole to reuse for the next glue-in he installed. So there's already 4 videos about this core drill bit for bolt removal online, and we're gonna go over them because they don't have enough views because they don't go, oh, you won't believe this trick in their titles, justifying the clickbait. Let's start with James Day's video while he tries to remove this power sleeve bolt. He's using a 16 millimeter core drill bit, and while he's drilling, it bound up on him and snapped the drill bit. It is a thin wall drill bit, and so you kind of have to be careful with them.
Rip the bit.
He was able to pull out some of the chunks of that and continue to drill, luckily. This is the issue with route developing and replacing, is it doesn't always go smooth, and it ends up being just an absolute ton of work. And I don't think a lot of climbers who don't develop realize that. Now, you'll notice there is a hose attached to these, and what it is the adapter spins while keeping this in place. Water flows through here and keeps the bit nice and cool, because if it heats up and you're not giving enough water, that'll also break off the bit, which makes it pretty tricky to try to hold a water source right there, not let it flow out too much because you're trying not to use too much water, but also to drill straight.
There we go.
Between Bobby's video and James Day's video, vice grips, needle nose vice grips seem to be pretty helpful. So one of the concerns is this ends up polishing the sidewalls of the hole, making your epoxy not stick as well. This is where I think using a drill bit to go into the hole, like in this case, James would have to use like a 16 millimeter drill bit and maybe rough it up a little bit, and or use a really nice epoxy. You don't want to use polyester, honestly, ever. Vinyl ester like AC100, maybe, but the nicer the epoxy is, the better it's going to hold onto those walls. Now we did some tests where we over drilled some holes before we put in some glue ins to see if there's such a thing as too much epoxy. Now there probably is such a thing as too much epoxy, but in our tests we found they were super good enough. So if you use epoxy with a 16mm hole and you put in something that may only require a 12mm hole, it's probably super good enough. The next video is also by James Day while he's practicing using this for the first time. And you can see that it takes him about 5 minutes to pull out this wedge bolt. And he's using a D13 or a 13mm core bit in order to do it. Now, he struggles to pull out the bit for a little bit, but after wiggling it enough, and this is without vice grips, he was able to pull it out.
The whole thing came out.
Now I do like his squeeze bottle method, and we'll go over some other ways to attach this to a water source. So Climbing Taiwan intentionally glued in a rod of metal in order to test this. And in his video about it, you can see that he's using a soda bottle with a hand pump. And he used a 14mm bit that has an inside diameter just shy of 12mm, and the rod he put in was a 10mm rod. Now in his case, it took 13 minutes of drilling before he was able to poke at it with a screwdriver, but then he ended up just finished drilling it out and it got stuck inside of the drill bit.
Not in there anymore, it's in here.
Now one thing you have to do to get these off is clamp the adapter and vice grip it and twist it off, but then it is easy to get out whatever is inside of the bit. And in order to maybe rough up the hole, but also to just make sure it's completely cleaned out, you can just run a drill bit through there that matches the size of the hole you already created. Now the last video is from Greg German himself with a POV of drilling with this thing and managing a hand pump at the same time. And in that video, they just drill until the entire bolt gets stuck inside of the drill bit. Now there's a lot of helpful information in the Mountain Project thread about this, so we'll go over the highlights of what they have to say, and then we are going to go drill some holes ourselves. So Greg German talks about the problem he was trying to solve and that he emailed several factories until he found the KM Glass tool store that we are able to get these from now. He says about 3 minutes to core drill a wedge bolt in granite and 1 cup of water. Now to explain Morse cone, it is a smooth shaft that goes inside of here, and that's it. There's no tightening, there's no tools, there's no twisting, except when you want to try to get it out, it's kind of a pain in the ass. Water goes through the tube, out through here, and out through the bit. Blake M seemed concerned about water usage, and Gregerman said that battery power is more of a limiting factor than the amount of water he used, which was less than he expected. BMD Hacks looks like he got an Amazon hydration bladder that I assume I could clip to, let's say, an ascender to the rope that I'm actually hanging on, so it's above me, and then I'm not having to hold it up and drill. And he had a photo of a bolt that's a perfect example of something you are not going to be able to spin and extract out. In Gregerman's video that we showed you, he said he removed 15 bolts with 1 battery in about 2 liters of water. Now this part of the thread talks about drills. This is not necessarily a drill you always have with you when you are installing bolts. You typically have a hammer drill. And you can get an SDS adapter bit with a chuck on it, so you can tighten this down on there, since obviously this is not going to go into an SDS adapter. And you can spin the bit. Now the problem is it doesn't have a chuck on a hammer drill. It is go mode or not. And so in this case, I can set the chuck to 1, well, since I'm holding it. And if my hand gets it stuck, it won't spin it. And I would obviously turn that up for rock. But if you don't have that, you'll get what James Day had, and that drill spins out from under you and hurts your wrist and breaks your bit. So you can use a rotary hammer drill, and you can put it in spin only mode, but just be mindful that you don't get this benefit. Now back to this guy. Gregerman said the button head update, no go. But apparently the split shaft, when the bit gets over to that part, binds up, grabs it, and this is not gonna move, and so this ends up breaking. But what I have here in my hand is a 14mm bit, which goes over that just great, and 14mm is a great size for a lot of glue-ins, including the crossover bolt if you're not looking for that tight tolerance, whereas the crossover bolt is designed for a 12.7mm hole or 1/2 inch. Now BMD Hacks had a clutch drill and still the drill bit broke. So they go into the weeds of why that might happen, but one thing that could help is rolling the drill a little bit while you're doing it. So it's not so tight, it's loosely in there. But like Greg Barnes pointed out, that it could look like a wedge bolt and still be a split shaft. I do like this photo of a cheap Home Depot valve inline to regulate water flow. It gets interesting now. Can you put a mechanical bolt inside of a hole you just made? Because if it's 13 millimeters, can you put a 1/2 inch, I don't know, 5-piece bolt in, or even a wedge bolt? Because 1/2 inch is 12.7. At what point is that not super safe enough? So it looks like Gregor Man tested this. He measured the hole to be 13.26 millimeters because in the hole that I drilled outside already, my hole was a full millimeter bigger than this, probably because I was rolling it. But even with a 13.26 millimeter hole, it looked like he got a 1/2 inch redhead in there. BMD Hacks shows a page for the ANSI range for a 1/2 inch drill bit, which is 12.7 millimeters, to go from 13.2 to 13.46. As long as you can reach your torque specs for the bolt you're putting in, probably fine. Here's a photo of Jim Day's bolts that he pulled out from the video that we saw, and his broken bit. Looked like Alec Baker managed to core drill out a twist bolt, and it took him 2 liters of water in over an hour. It looks like Blake M broke 6 bits, and it might have been just the way it was interacting with the bolts that they were trying to get out. Now, if you upsize just 1 millimeter, you could probably avoid a lot of that problems. BMD Hack said, if I don't use a clutch drill, I definitely explode the bits when they bite on the metal. Now, Sam Jones asked about the 14 millimeter core drill bit that Team Tough sells and Bolt Products. It is a thick wall thing. So if you're trying to take out a 3/8 bolt, you're definitely gonna have to use like a glue in. But if you look at the setup required, that seems like a royal pain in the ass, honestly. But it's those kinds of ideas that help spark this idea, and hopefully people can build off of what even I'm doing, and then we can make follow-up videos about this. Shall we start drilling? So let me show you my setup before we go outside. Is this hose goes over that nipple just fine, and I don't feel like it needs a clamp. I haven't had an issue with it so far. And this is a little less than a 1/2 inch, but the inside diameter is 10 millimeters. A little less than 10 mil for that part of the nipple, and down here where it's screwed on is almost 10 mil. So this has gone on super good enough, and I don't need to clamp it. Now this definitely needs improvement, but this is all I got for today, so this is what we're gonna go with. So I just shoved that down that pre-drilled hole, and then I can, well, I don't wanna do it right here, but I pour it as I need it, and you'll see more about that out there. Now this might give you vibes that I'm a nerd because I've got 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 millimeter core bits. Ooh, that is 17. The inside of that is 14.7. And all the wall thicknesses seem to be about 1.4 millimeters. I don't know why you'd have to replace an Eterna, but it is a 14 millimeter glue in, and that's the size I would probably want for that. Next is a 16 millimeter bit, and you can see that the Morse cone is the same on all of them. And so the very bottom of the cone is 12, and it tapers out to almost 13 millimeters. So it only goes in about that far before it gets stuck in there. And the very bottom of this would be 13.5. So the bottom of the Eterna would work, but you would have a hell of a time trying to get it started. One way to extract glue ends is use a hydraulic. No, this is from Brake Test. Oh, yeah, that's way too big for a fixed glue. Here's a Lapas 10 mil. Yep, too big. Here's a 1/2 inch double wedge bolt from Lapas. And ooh, yeah, I don't know about this side though. You would risk, on the 17 mil I would try it. I don't know if it'd work. That is a massive hole to end up with when you're done. Next is 15 millimeters. And the inside's about 3 millimeters less. The overall usable length of all of these is 91 millimeters. They're all the same. This is a crossover bolt that usually goes in a 12.7 millimeter hole, so this would not work. 16 minus 3, it works. It's just a tight fit. 14 minus 3 equals 11, so that 10 millimeter glue-in works just fine. It would work on Meteora Lapas. Work on the fixed glue-ins, work on Junipers. Ooh, that would be a pretty tight fit for the twist bolts with the 16 millimeter. Back to this topic, if you don't want to have it touch at all the split shaft so it doesn't break your bit, a 14 millimeter bit might be what you need. Ooh, this 13 fits quite well, actually. Here's a 3/8 bolt that is supposed to be 9.5, cone is 9.7, and the clip is 11. So we're 13 millimeter. Fits quite well on that side, and ooh, doesn't quite fit very good on this side. So the 3/8 bit is going to do really well in a 14 mil if you're just going to be gluing it anyways. Now in case there's something really tiny, we got a 10, 11, and a 12 here. But 10 minus 3 is 7, so 1/4 inch bolts, maybe? Here's a tiny bolt. Let's see if that goes. Ooh, that would potentially break that bit. You could go up, if you have a 1/4 incher, go up 11 mil, and that would be a lot safer if you're dealing with a split shaft that's that big in the middle. And just for comparison, that's a 5/16 versus a 1/4 inch. Now, what about power bolts? Now this goes in a 1/2 inch hole, and so this is a 17 mil bit, and it goes over just fine, but that is a pretty big hole, especially because you probably end up with an 18 millimeter hole when you're done. Though you could use the 8 millimeter twist bolt to be fine. A 16 mil core bit, I just don't think would go over this well. Now 3/8 power bolt, you could, oof, that's a 13 mil. 14 mil pretty much goes over it just fine. And a 14 mil hole is easy to put almost any glue inside of it. Now Greg German hit me up almost a year ago about this so I could test it. And I ended up buying on AliExpress the wrong bit adapter. That's not a Morse cone adapter. This is. In AliExpress, I've now waited 4 weeks for the order of these to come in. And what size hose do you get? It was kind of a pain in the butt. So now that I have a shop, I want to use that to make this more convenient for people who are trying to get these things. I buy the hose 100 feet at a time. I personally do not need that many bits. And so we stock them, including the adapters. And one of the benefits we're gonna have is that you can overbuy and then return what you don't use. If somebody's breaking 6 bits, you're trying to finish what you go out to start. And so if you wanna buy, trying to think of any hardware I wouldn't take back. If you want to overbuy drill bits, hardware, tools, whatever, for developing routes, let me know. And then you can overbuy, and then you can return what you don't use, especially when it's not life-supporting stuff like a drill bit or a core bit. Some of the bolts, case by case. It's just if you're not worried about the weight of the extra tools, it's nice to have them, but then you don't have to worry about the cost of it. I'll have the links for this and the adapter for where you can get these on AliExpress as well. I'll have that in the product description. I don't care if you buy it or not from the site because we don't charge any extra money for these, and we're trying to make it convenient. I'm trying to serve the building community with stuff like this, not make money on it. I do have to add the cost of the credit card fee and shipping it to you. Free shipping's not free. Built into the price, and then we add 20%. So anyone who's a support membership, they get that 20% off, and they basically get all of this type of hardware literally at cost. A lot of the stuff that we import, Romer, Lapas, Titan Climbing, a lot of that stuff doesn't have typical margins that you would have for retail stores. So supporters are basically getting stuff at cost, but I'm bringing it in and tying up a bunch of cash flow in order to help developers who are putting in the stuff that we all use and share as climbers. You can see how much work it is when something breaks and you can't finish what you're doing. It's a royal pain in the ass. So hopefully I can make that a little bit more convenient for you guys. We include 3 or 4 feet of this with every adapter you buy, but if you need extra length, we've got it laying around. Just email us what you need. We're here to help you guys out. Now we can start going outside and drilling some holes. Now this bolt right here is a Lapas 12 mil titanium wedge bolt. It's kind of silly to be core drilling this out because there's good threads sticking out that you could put an adapter on and spin and extract. But for this case, I'm going to use a 16 mil, 16 minus 3 is 13 mil inside diameter, and that is a 12 mil bolt. So that should easily go over the clip and the bolt itself. Core drilling this larger diameter, in my mind, should be worst case scenario, and we'll see how much water it uses up and how long it takes me. My clutch is set at 9 and I can hear it working. Now the water isn't falling out too fast as long as this is pushed up against the rock. Yeah. So this sucked because you could see the core bit was trying to get through that clip and it was struggling to do so. This would have been a lot easier if I was up one more size. For a 16 millimeter drill bit, it gave me a 17 millimeter hole. Now this does not want to come out because this part spins with it. So if you just have 2 vice grips, then you can spin them. Oh, there we go. Ha, got it. Pretty cool how that stays in there, and it comes off super good enough. Well, I'm glad I didn't make that look too easy. The first one I drilled took like 5 minutes and was like a cup of water. So, but anyways, this is why you should practice at home often, not just once. And if it goes well, you should definitely keep doing it until it doesn't go well and you can problem solve at home. Needle nose vice grips. I definitely recommend that because you're probably not core drilling out a bolt that's sticking out. So you'll probably have to get in there and wiggle it a bit. If you're going to use a glue-in, if in doubt, go up 1 millimeter bigger. It'd probably make your life easier. I think most of my problems were caused because I was hitting the clips at the bottom instead of just going around them because it was not having that big of a problem with the rock itself. Now there's a lot of tools I was using besides just those bits, and so I'm gonna maybe try to start carrying those in the store as well. The SDS to chuck adapter, I mean, you could buy them on Amazon for 20 bucks, but knowing which one to get, I think is more of the issue than just ordering off Amazon. But I want to try to make this as smooth as possible for you guys. This is a yabber, or yet another bolt remover, and hopefully we can get something like this or this, and maybe even loan them out to where you can just buy them, use them, and return them as long as they work for the next guy. Anyways, that's just more rabbits, and this video is too long. I appreciate the bolting community and everything you guys do, and I am trying to contribute the best I can. Go check out the Bolting Bible. That's the information to hopefully make your life easier, and check out our shop with the bolts we have because hopefully that'll also make your life easier. Thanks for watching.